Freedom of speech, it's a very difficult subject. It's far removed from the "I defend your right to freedom of speech" that we're used to hearing about. I believe it was Voltaire who said, "I don't like what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it." Because freedom of speech is much more complex than that. Everybody says, "I believe in freedom of speech," but how many people really do? Take any person who says, "I believe in freedom of speech," and ask them, "Okay, so do you want to invest in my child pornography business?" And they'll say, "Whoa, no, whoa. I don't support that. But I thought you said you support free speech. So somebody should be able to say what they want." "Oh, well, I mean, there should be limits, of course." And in lies the problem. While just about everybody does believe in free speech, nobody really does believe in free speech. We all believe in limitations in some form or another. Anyone who holds this position that they defend all speech no matter what is either crazy or a liar, because it's far more complicated than that. Now let's look at another common situation. Someone's being racist and somebody comes up and says, "Stop being intolerant. We're not going to tolerate intolerance." And that person turns around and says, "You're being intolerant of my intolerance. You're a hypocrite." And then that person replies, "You complaining about intolerance when you're being intolerant makes you a hypocrite." In actuality, both of them are being hypocrites. It actually is true. They're both being that way. Because it's far more complicated than that. And you end up in this really terrible paradox of trying to understand free speech and what constitutes free speech and what doesn't. Because in reality, speech is controlled and always should be controlled. There should always be limits. There is no this liberal idea of there just being free speech. Because, to use an example, the founding fathers said, free speech, but they weren't very specific on that. Does that mean somebody could come in and argue that the British Crown should come back into the country? Well, they would probably say no. If a communist stood up in their time and said, "You know what, we should probably completely overthrow all of the rich people and replace it with egalitarianism," they would certainly say, "No, you're not allowed to say that." In our modern day, there's all kinds of speech that aren't allowed, hate speech, etc. Because we shouldn't ever reduce it to simply being free speech. "I believe in free speech." No, you don't. You believe in this. If we say, "No, don't blame all Muslims for terrorism, and we're going to censor you if you say something that's insanely Islamophobic," they turn around and say, "Oh my God, you don't believe in freedom of speech." And then someone who's Christian turns around and says, "You're trying to promote homophobia by allowing gay marriage. And when we try to argue against it, you shout us down. As homophobes, you're restricting our freedom of speech." Because it's much more complicated than that. What we should do is come up with a definition of what speech should be free and what speech should not be free. Because there's no one who really believes in this ultimate freedom of speech, because it just doesn't exist. What does this lead me to? One section in On Contradiction that Mao wrote. He wrote, "There are two kinds of contradictions in society. Contradictions between people and contradictions between the people and the enemy." There's a very notable difference. Contradictions between the people are not antagonistic. The contradictions between the people and the enemies of the people are antagonistic. The contradictions between the people and the various groups can be solved by debate, with free speech, with all manner of, debate, bring it to parliament, voting, what have you. The contradiction between the people and the enemy should never have free speech. The enemy is not entitled to have free speech. That's the whole point of a dictatorship of the proletariat, is to hammer down the bourgeois, confiscate their property, ban the landlords, prevent them from having free speech. So the next time you're talking about free speech or you hear somebody else talking about free speech, think about that. And just remember that even when you're arguing about free speech, it's far more complicated than just merely supporting it or not supporting it. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.